all week as the Ravens have their mandatory. You know, Coach Harbaugh likes to put some helmets and some shells on some guys this week, so we will be all over that. Any breaking news will happen first on the WNST tech service. That's, of course, all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis Colossus will be here on Thursday driving you home, and we are driving now north up to Boston, and, of course, the Orioles taking on the Red Sox all week long. It's always nice in June when it's a first-place battle. Haven't been a whole lot of Junes, we could say that around here, but they have that problem a lot of Junes in Boston. This guy's been covering the Boston Red Sox for a number of years at Comcast Sportsnet and CSNNE.com up in New England. He is Sean McAdam. He's also out on Twitter at Sean_McAdam. And, hey, man, the Red Sox, this is, familiar territory for the Orioles fans. We don't even know how to get people down to the ballpark at this point, but I like these first-place battles in June. I can get used to this, Sean.
Yeah, it's fun to have these series that really get a little bit of attention and have everybody focused on two pretty good teams battling it out for the division lead. And it seems a little strange to sort of hit the reset button in a span of 2 weeks because, of course, the Red Sox were just there for a 4-game series at Camden Yards, a couple of weeks ago, and now here we are, a pretty quick turnaround in Boston with 3 more, but as I said, a nice little focus in the middle of a long season for a couple of teams going head-to-head.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a little while before they get together again. It feels like, the AL East has been all we've seen of late. And I'll tell you, from the Red Sox perspective, a couple weeks ago, I looked down and I saw, my God, they're hitting 295 as a team. I mean, how long can they keep that up? Well, they're still kind of hitting 295 as a team. I don't know at what point that sails off, but they're hitting at a clip that's really unprecedented in the history of baseball, honestly.
Yeah, they're a very good offensive team. I think people expected they would be good. I don't know that many people anticipated that they would be this good, but they lead the American League in virtually every significant offensive category, from runs scored to total bases to doubles to OPS to slugging, you name it, and among the league leaders in home runs. They've got obviously a terrific season from David Ortiz and breakout seasons from guys like Mookie Betts and Xander Bogaerts and Jackie Bradley Jr., who form sort of the young nucleus that the Red Sox are attempting to build around. So they've got a couple of guys slumping too, and Hanley Ramirez and Travis Shaw of late, but lately that really hasn't hurt them because enough guys have picked up the slack. So offensively, they continue to steamroll.
In the case of Bogaerts and Bradley and Betts, and I had several people tell me they thought Betts was the best player on the team back in spring training. Clearly, some of these guys have moved ahead of the curve. I mean, what was the ceiling on Bogaerts? What was the ceiling on Bradley Jr. to kind of have these years? Because Lord knows the Red Sox waited it out with those guys through championship years as well as last place years. They needed this young infusion of talent that, quite frankly, the Yankees haven't had, which is why they're where they are, but the Orioles have had with Scope and Machado and some other younger players, even Britton filling a really nice role for them at this point. The Red Sox needed that sort of step up, and that's one of the reasons they were in last place, was waiting on these cats, right?
Yeah, they paid the price with last place finishes in 2012 and again in 14 and 15, 3 of the last 4 years. So it's been a dry spell, and they wisely resisted giving up any of these guys in deals, and now they're sort of reaping the benefits of showing some patience with these players and having them come into their prime altogether this season.
Sean McAdam joining us here from Comcast Sports up in the New England area, getting ready for some Oriole baseball there this week and hopefully some Fenway Franks. And, hey, Messay's coming to Foxborough this weekend. It hasn't been lost on my calendar, but the biggest star, obviously, David Ortiz at this point. And what he's done has really been otherworldly. Now, every time he hits a bomb around here, the Orioles fans start mentioning the S word, and I think you know what I'm talking about. I don't mean Sean, by the way. And at his age, with this kind of productivity, especially with a couple of bad wheels, I mean, we saw him get thrown out by a country country mile at second base. It was almost comical. I mean, I tweeted about an hour later, has David Ortiz gotten to second base yet? It's clear he can't run and still has 27 doubles. He was given up on 6-7 years ago and has only hit, 150, 200 more home runs in his career. And this is supposed to be bye-bye, and I know there's some feeling that physically he might not be able to do this anymore. But right now, I mean, I give him some MVP votes, and especially for a guy that never picks up a glove, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's been a terrific force in the lineup. He's the everyday cleanup hitter for the most part, and he does have to be careful about not playing the field. The Red Sox have played 4 interleague road games this year in Atlanta and San Francisco, and Ortiz has yet to play a game at first base. In the past, he would play at least half those games at first to keep his bat in the lineup.
But that's smart, right, to some degree? I mean, that's where he is, right?
Big picture, he is 40 years old. He does have some chronic foot and heel problems that date back a few years. And it's clear that he needs additional recovery time. You do see him laboring when he runs. But in terms of standing in the batter's box and providing, a menace to opposing teams, he's still very much capable of doing that. He's got an OPS well over 1,000. He leads the league in doubles. He's among the league leaders in RBI and home runs. So, if he has to get a day off or so every week, that's a small price to pay to keep him in the lineup otherwise.
We're all hand-wringing around here about Ubaldo Jimenez and where he is in the rotation. It feels to me with the Red Sox that how much money they spend that you eliminate a guy like Sandoval, who was a massive, expensive mistake, and you go through the Crawfords and the other players that haven't made it work, for money. I know it feels like the rope is a little short on a guy like Price, but, wasting money there just appears to be sort of, part of doing business as the Red Sox. It comes with a lot more angst for the Orioles.
Yeah, I think the Red Sox have a little bit more margin for error, so that, when a guy doesn't pan out, it doesn't completely croak their season or paint them into corners and have them do things they'd rather not. Sandoval is kind of dead money on the payroll right now, and so for that matter is a guy like Alan Craig, who's making $9 or $10 million at Pawtucket, and not even on the 40-man roster at this point. So there are some benefits to having those sort of economic resources and allowing you to take some gambles in the free agent field. And it's a reminder that it can be a rather inefficient marketplace if you don't make the right call.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. And, hey, I've said David Price would look a lot better in an Oriole uniform than he does in a Red Sox uniform, but there is a price to be paid. And for the Orioles waiting out Machado, I mean, what it's going to cost to sign a Bogarts or a Bradley Jr. or a Betts, especially if they all come to blossom. These are the issues, and I guess Dombrowski's had it both ways. I mean, he's done it on the cheap. He's done it with a very, very generous owner out in Detroit and getting them, near the brass ring. As far as different philosophies. We see what Theo's done out in Chicago now. I know Larry Lucchino's gone. Dr. Charles, my friend from Baltimore, now gone. Where are the Red Sox philosophically? Has anything really changed with Dombrowski coming in other than, I guess Sherrington had a really big boots to fill in the case of Theo to try to win a championship, and spending money like a drunken sailor was part of that last offseason, right?
Yeah, I mean, you ask about philosophy, and I think the answer is, what day of the week is it? Because it can change almost overnight. In 2013, when they had that surprise season and won the World Series, and did it with a number of low budget, if you will, or average free agent deals, like to guys like Victorino and Napoli, and sort of middle class free agents, if you will. They crowed a little bit that, they weren't the Yankees going out to chase every big free agent signing every winter, but then a couple of last place finishes changed that philosophy pretty quickly. It led them to go out and sign Ramirez and Sandoval to decidedly mixed results. And then this past year, it led them to go out and make David Price, the highest paid pitcher in the game. So, they tend to adapt to circumstances. And when desperation hits and they feel they have to re-engage the fan base and sell tickets again, they're not above going after a big free agent and spending. But like most teams, they would prefer to develop their own players. And when you look at guys like Betts and Bogaerts and Bradley, that's a reminder that having some patience in that department can pay off in a big way.
Sean McAdam joining us here. He covers all things Red Sox up in the great New England area, my wife's homeland. She's rooting for the Red Sox this week. He's at CSNNE.com. That's, of course, Comcast Sportsnet in New England. You can also follow him out on Twitter at Sean_McAdam. You said middle class free agents. We have sort of a little bit of that going on around here where you grab a Nelson Cruz and he goes otherworldly and you don't re-sign him. Certainly this year, the Trumbo signing has to be credited as one of the great. I mean, it really was more of an insurance policy in case they didn't get Chris Davis, and he's wound up being the better ball player this year, and he's very much in that middle class area. And when you shop there and it goes well, you pat yourself on the back. When you sign Baldo Jimenez and Giovanni Gallardo in the middle-class range for pitching, and they can't get on the field, they can't throw strike one, you sit around and hand-wring about a $12 million mistake you made, but it feels good when you get a Trumbo or a Cruz that does it.
Yeah, I mean, give Dan Duquette some credit in terms of building that offense up. I thought that, Trumbo was kind of a swing and miss guy who would occasionally hit the ball out of the ballpark, but provide enough defensive issues that they would kind of cancel each other out. But that hasn't happened, and Trumbo's been a nice surprise for the Orioles. The pitching decisions haven't been as successful, certainly with Gallardo and some physical issues, and Jimenez being inconsistent, to say the least, on the mound. But, I think that is sort of emblematic of how difficult it is to go out and find pitching of any sort, whether it be free agent or trade or trying to develop it. It's the hardest thing to do, and it's something the Red Sox have struggled with for a long time here. Last year, there was the acknowledgement finally that, this team needed a number one guy to front the rotation, and that's why they went out and spent the kind of money on Price. But not every franchise has that economic flexibility to do so.
Or can be appealing to a pitcher. I've long argued here that if the Orioles would have offered David Price $218 million, I just don't think pitchers will sign up to come pitch at Camden Yards. There's been no history of that, and certainly for the owner here, there's no history. He wants to pay pitchers, the top-flight pitchers, not the, as you would say, the middle-class pitchers, because you sort of get what you pay for in that case. Sean, how many years on the Red Sox for you up there?
More than I'd care to mention, Nestor. I think this is 27 or 28. I've stopped counting.
Okay, well, fair enough. I mean, Dan Duquette, as a baseball guy, as a guy who was sort of blackballed and sort of in the island of misfit toys and couldn't come back, give me a little case study, because I know you've been doing this a long time, and I know you were around there when he was the guy everybody was fighting with, and they didn't have 3 rings in their pocket at that point, and he did spend a decade in sort of exile, out in the Cape Cod, wherever he was there. Just kind of shocked that there's been this second act for him, and it's been as successful as ALCSs and pennant races and all that. I'm shocked Buck took the job. I mean, I had my press pass taken away 10 years ago after 21 years, Sean. So, Mr. Angelos and I don't see eye to eye on a whole lot, but certainly there was a lot of losing here. There was a long history of that here. There's almost a pinch myself feeling, after 45 years of being an Orioles fan, that they're actually in pennant races in June, because I really didn't think this organization could ever pull that together. And to think that they did it with, a guy like Showalter that, had been thrown out of a couple of organizations, didn't have a seat to sit in outside of Bristol, and Duquette, who no one wanted, and no one wanted this job, kind of famously. He had to go outside of the baseball community because no one inside of baseball would take a job working for Peter.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting second act for Dan Duquette to have been out of the game for about a decade, and you wonder if he seemingly had given up hope about being a general manager anywhere else. Um, you know, I think in retrospect, he is being given more credit for his time here in Boston. He made some monumental trades and free agent signings. The trade, he made two great trades. One getting Derek Lowe and Jason Varitek for Heathcliff Slocum, and the other in bringing Pedro Martinez to Boston. In addition to signing Manny Ramirez as a free agent, those are four very big pieces to a couple of championship teams here in Boston. And, Dan was let go a year before that happened, and Theo Epstein gets a lot of credit, as he should, for, making moves like Kurt Schilling and like Kevin Millar and some other, and David Ortiz certainly, but Dan, in a lot of ways, put together the foundation of those championship teams, and probably deserves more credit in the big picture in Red Sox history. But it's nice that he has taken advantage of his second chance and, gotten the Orioles back into playoff contention after a long 15-year period in which, they had all those losing seasons and the franchise was kind of off the map. He's brought them back, and the fact that he's been able to do it in a working relationship with Buck Showalter, I don't know that 3 or 4 years ago you would have suggested that partnership would have been a successful one. A couple of strong-willed guys with definite philosophies, but somehow it's worked.
And an owner who had 20 years in last place, too. I mean, throw that part in, because the owner here is a big part of the equation. And every move,
sure.
Every signing, every physical examination that we're all familiar with. I mean, it's a weird thing, but they're winning, and, winning washes away all of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it tends to obscure some of the conflicts or some of the stuff that goes on in the background. But when the team's a contender and being successful, that tends to take some of the spotlight off.
Sean McAdam covering all things Red Sox up in New England at Comcast Sports. Then last thing for you, you covered Theo as well, so I guess it begs the question where you are with this whole tree of Duquette and Theo and now Dombrowski running the place there, and Shapiro's up in Toronto. I mean, there's been a lot of moving parts amongst executives in the American League, and guys that have been they're lifers. They've been doing this for 20, 30 years. Theo's now 25 years into doing this. I remember him interning running around Camden Yards a quarter of a century ago, about to build something else out in Chicago. I would have bet more on him than against him. But again, there was that history in Chicago, not just Bartman and all of that, heaviness, but it just. Did they want to win? How much money were they going to be willing to spend there, and what parts could they put together? That Chicago thing is, it's the story of the summer in sports, quite frankly, outside of the Olympics.
Yeah, I agree. And if Theo is able to finish the job and bring a World Series to Chicago and Wrigley Field, then he will assure himself as going down in the game's history as one of the most accomplished general managers. A guy who, in the span of 12 years or so, broke championship droughts both at Fenway and Wrigley. That's quite an accomplishment. And
you and I spent large stretches of our lives believing neither one would ever happen. We still might believe the other one might not happen, right?
Yeah, I mean it's not guaranteed as good as the Cubs look. I mean, you would like their chances this October, and if not this October, then any one of the next few, given the foundation that's been built there and the guys who were kind of like in Boston, just coming into their prime, blended in with some veteran contributors. But he certainly has them positioned to make serious runs here for the next several years, and really that's all you can ask.
Yeah, we all knew when we threw Jake Arrieta in on that deal he was going to turn into Cy Young, right?
Yeah, that was one that Dan would like to have back, I'm sure, and it's worked out for the Cubs. But, there have been a number of moves that Theo's made out there, trading for Chris Bryant, drafting and developing all the young players that are part of that team. going out and recruiting John Lester, hiring Joe Madden. His fingerprints are all over that, that's for sure.
Last thing for you on the pitching for the Red Sox this week. Obviously, Stephen Wright has been this sensation, and I'm always day-to-day with knuckleball pitchers. I've been around this a long time, but he's got it as going as well as Wakefield or Necro or any of those guys ever did. And then there's Rodriguez, who we mentioned guys from our organization. It's not very often that an Oriole prospect winds up with a Red Sox hat on through the course of time, because usually those deals don't happen within divisions. That one is sort of a weird one on the backside of a pitcher who's now pitching for the Yankees, of course, with all the money. But it's always tough to see a prospect, whether it's Arrieta, and the Orioles have a lot of that going on this year with Steve Johnson doing well. They gave Gonzalez away, and he's back in the big leagues and performing. And the Orioles are struggling with pitching right now. They'll see one of their best prospects pitching against them this week again.
Yeah, Rodriguez has had a mixed season, certainly. He just came back after missing the first 2 months with what at the time looked like a very minor knee injury in spring training, and grew into be something more time-consuming. And his 3 starts have been decidedly up and down, and not what the Red Sox would have hoped, but they're trying to be patient here and understand that while it's mid-June for everybody else, it's essentially early April for him, and he's got to build up arm strength and get back into the swing of things. But, this is a young left-hander who can throw at 95, 96 with an outstanding changeup to go with it. And, as much as they did not want to be in the position to be auctioning off guys like Andrew Miller a few years ago, they at least have something pretty significant to show for his loss.
Sean, you're always a great guest, man. I appreciate you coming on with us, and I know we get together kind of frequently in this Red Sox-Orioles thing. I hope that we get together in September and it's still relevant, and I have no reason to believe it won't be. I mean, I'm not a big buyer on the Orioles pitching right now, and I don't think they're going to be able to make deals, but they've hung in there. To have a club in June with pitching this bad and hitting this good that's 13 games above 500 at one point, I think it holds out hope that this is going to be a really good race all summer long, and no one's running away, man.
Yeah, I think it's going to be congested in September. I would expect that Toronto and maybe even the Yankees might still be there, but it is a competitive division. I don't see anybody running away and leaving the others in the dust. So, it could be a very fun and interesting final month in the East.
Have a Fenway Frank and a bowl of chowder for me. I appreciate you, Sean.
Okay, Nestor, my pleasure.
You got it. Sean McAdam covering Boston Red Sox baseball at Comcast Sportsnet and CSNNE. You can also follow his journey out on Twitter, and tens of thousands do at Sean_McAdam. That's SEAN_MCADAM. You can find me out on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, anywhere you are. We are, including the Bahia Toyota Audio Vault, 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world. Just download the TuneIn Radio app onto your mobile device. And if you're viewing us out on Facebook Live, hello, YouTube, the whole deal. We are the full Monty, fully digital and right in the palm of your hands. Can't do better than that. Breaking news happens first on the WNST text service. It did over the weekend. Even when it's bad news, as it was in the case of Rashad Perryman, we get it to you first. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard, and it's absolutely free to sign up. And you can also sign up to get our morning newspaper at 7 a.m. each and every morning, delivered to your email inbox, all powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. I also want to give a plug out to the second week of July. We're doing a WNST Rock Week. If you've been following me out on Facebook or Twitter, I'm releasing some funny Hairspray era Hammerjacks pictures from back in the day, having some fun with that, and airing never heard before interviews with rock stars for 1 week. It'll be All-Star Game Week here at WNST, and you'll want to check that out on the web and laugh at bad haircuts. I don't have a really good picture of me with the mullet. If anyone has one, send it along, nasty@WNST.net. I know my wife would appreciate that. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Taos in Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.